Have you ever thought that you're being strangled, not by the world, but by your own thoughts? Each breath of anxiety tightens the grip. Every imagined catastrophe, every looping what if, every midnight dread, they coil around your life like a serpent, whispering that disaster is always one misstep away. You ration your joy, withhold your trust, brace for impact. But the impact never comes. Only the bracing remains. Only the exhaustion of a war waged against phantoms. Michel de Montaigne, the philosopher who turned self-examination into a blade, sliced through the illusion with one merciless observation. When you stop worrying, everything starts to go well. This is not wishful thinking. This is the verdict of a man who buried most of his children, faced plague and civil war, and still wrote with more levity than most modern souls ever muster. His words are not an invitation to naivety. They are a challenge to the tyranny of preemptive suffering. Here is the truth you've been gasping toward. Worry is not preparation. It is surrender. Every minute spent gnawing on futures that may never come is a minute stolen from the life you are actually living. The mind, in its desperate attempt to control the uncontrollable, becomes both prisoner and jailer. But the bars are made of smoke. The lock was never engaged. And when you finally drop the illusion of control, something shifts. Not in the universe, in you. Opportunities you were too tense to notice reveal themselves. People you were too guarded to trust become allies. Ideas you were too frantic to entertain rise to the surface. The world hasn't changed. Your vision has. You stop seeing threats and start seeing terrain. This is the secret the ancients carved into stone and the modern world forgot. The obstacle is the way, not by brute force, but by the refusal to let fear dictate your focus. Montaigne's genius was in spotting the pattern, that those who stopped bracing for collapse found themselves, inexplicably, standing firmer. The question is no longer how do I survive my fears, but what could I build if I stopped letting them breathe down my neck? Worry is not a natural state. It is a learned reflex, a conditioned response to a world that has convinced us of its inherent danger. Montaigne's insight cuts deeper than mere reassurance. It exposes the scaffolding of this mental prison. The core truth is this: worry does not navigate the future. It hijacks the present. Like a ship's captain obsessively plotting storms instead of sailing, we forfeit our agency to specters of what might be. But the storms we fear are not on the horizon. They are in the teacup of our minds, stirred by imagination until they seem oceanic. At the heart of Montaigne's observation lies a radical redefinition of control. We believe worry is a form of vigilance, a psychological armor against chaos. In reality, it is the chaos. True control is not the illusion of preventing all misfortune, but the quiet mastery of meeting what comes without collapsing inward. The Stoics called this ataraxia, the unshakable calm that arises not from certainty, but from the dissolution of the need for it. Montaigne, ever the pragmatist, arrived at the same conclusion through relentless self-observation. The man who stops trying to dictate every outcome discovers, to his astonishment, that outcomes often arrange themselves. This is not passivity. It is precision. A mind unburdened by hypotheticals is free to engage with what is real. The levers it can actually pull, the ground it actually stands on. Modern psychology echoes this in the language of cognitive distortions. Catastrophizing, overgeneralization, the mental habits that turn pebbles into boulders. Montaigne's genius was in recognizing these patterns centuries before they had names, and prescribing their antidote. Stop. Stop feeding the phantom. Stop rehearsing tragedies. Stop mortgaging the present for a future you cannot own. Beneath it all pulses a universal law. Energy flows where attention goes. Worry is a form of inverted prayer, a devotion to what we dread. When that devotion ceases, the energy reinvests itself. Solutions appear where before there were only obstacles. Relationships deepen when freed from the weight of projection. Even luck seems to tilt in favor of the unburdened, though it is merely that they finally notice the doors left open in their peripheral vision. Ancient myths and sacred stories across cultures whisper the same truth in different tongues. The moment of surrender becomes the threshold of transformation. Consider the Buddhist parable of the monkey trap. A hollowed-out coconut chained to a post, filled with sweet rice just enough for a monkey to slip its hand in but not withdraw when clenched. The animal's refusal to release its prize becomes its captivity. So too with worry. We cling to our fears as if they might save us, not realizing they are the very chains that bind us. The trap has no power over an open hand. The river of Heraclitus offers another mirror. We cannot step into the same waters twice. Yet we exhaust ourselves trying to freeze the current into something static and controllable. Montaigne, in his essays, becomes a guide to navigating these ever-changing waters without drowning in them. He describes how the villagers near his estate would float rather than fight the rapids when crossing treacherous streams. Their relaxed bodies carried safely while tense swimmers perished. There is profound physics in this metaphor. Resistance creates drag, while surrender allows the natural buoyancy of existence to hold us. Christian mystics spoke of the dark night of the soul, not as punishment but as purification. When all our mental strategies fail, when worry exhausts itself against the unchangeable, we enter what John of the Cross called the living flame of love, not because suffering is virtuous, but because in its ashes we find our first taste of true peace. The Zen master's concept of beginner's mind mirrors this. Only when we release our death grip on certainty can we perceive the world as it actually is, rather than through the warped lens of our anxieties. The true test of philosophy lies not in grand revelations but in the quiet transformation of ordinary moments. Consider how worry manifests in daily life, the email left unsent for days, edited into oblivion by imagined judgments. The conversation never had because we rehearsed its possible failures instead of having it. The opportunities left unexplored because we prioritized preparing for disasters over pursuing possibilities. Montaigne's wisdom becomes practical when we recognize these patterns as they unfold, like catching ourselves mid-fall. The practice begins with a simple but revolutionary question: is this thought protecting me or imprisoning me? This discernment becomes the scalpel that cuts worry from wisdom. Modern neuroscience confirms what Montaigne intuited. Chronic worry physically rewires the brain, strengthening neural pathways that amplify anxiety while weakening those for creative problem-solving. The antidote emerges not through suppression but through redirection. Like training a river's current, we gradually shift mental energy from catastrophic forecasting to present-moment engagement. An executive facing a crucial presentation might notice her racing thoughts, then consciously redirect focus to the tactile sensation of her feet on the floor, the weight of the clicker in her hand, not as avoidance, but as recalibration. The presentation doesn't change, but her capacity to meet it does. Relationships transform when released from the weight of projection. Parents who worry less about their children's imagined futures become more attuned to their actual needs in the present moment. Partners freed from anticipating conflicts often find the conflicts themselves diminish. This isn't magical thinking. It's the natural consequence of energy no longer feeding what it fears. Even societal engagement benefits from this shift. Activists who channel concern into action rather than immobilizing dread often prove more effective, their clarity unclouded by despair. The civil rights movement's most powerful moments emerged not from panic but from profound, disciplined presence in the face of real danger. We stand at the crossroads of a fundamental human choice: to remain the jailer of our self-made prisons or to step into the frightening freedom of the unguarded moment. Montaigne offers no false promises. Suffering remains, uncertainty persists, but our relationship to them transforms. The warrior who drops his armor discovers he can move faster, strike truer, and that many of the arrows he feared were never loosed. This is the ultimate alchemy, not the elimination of life's difficulties, but the rediscovery of our innate capacity to meet them without preemptive surrender. The invitation is simple yet radical. For one day, 1 hour, 1 breath, stop bracing for impact. Notice what remains standing when the props of worry are removed. You may find, as Montaigne did, that the ground was always beneath your feet, that the air was always breathable, that the life you feared losing was waiting to be truly lived. The world needs fewer professional warriors and more chloride participants. Your unclenched hands might just catch what your anxious ones kept missing. The choice, as always, is yours. Continue the familiar struggle, or discover what happens when you simply let go.